May 2014. A small team of Russian developers at Neki watched as a simple 2D silhouette of a warrior performed a perfect roundhouse kick on a smartphone screen. It was fluid, it was weightless, and it was revolutionary. Shadow Fight 2 didn't have the billion-dollar marketing budget of a AAA title, yet it was spreading like a digital wildfire, eventually racking up over 500 million downloads and defining an entire genre of mobile combat. It was a masterpiece of minimalism, a game that proved you didn't need photorealistic faces if you had soul, timing, and atmosphere. But as the coins piled up and the pressure to scale became a corporate mandate, the shadows began to fade. The unique ink wash aesthetic that captivated the world was traded for generic 3D models, and the tactical, rhythmic combat was buried under a mountain of gacha crates, battle passes, and predatory monetization. What began as a pursuit of martial arts perfection has metastasized into a cynical exercise in player frustration and pay-to-win barriers. We traded the mystery of the silhouette for the clarity of the cash register. This is the story of how Shadow Fight lost its shadow. The Silhouette Masterpiece. To understand the fall, you have to appreciate the heights of the ascent. When Shadow Fight 2 arrived on the mobile scene, the market was saturated with cluttered, button-mashing clones. Neki did something radical. They took away the light. By reducing the fighters to black silhouettes against vibrant hand-painted backgrounds, they bypassed the uncanny valley of mobile graphics. It was a technical limitation turned into a legendary aesthetic. Without faces to distract the eye, the focus shifted entirely to the animation. Every strike felt heavy, every block felt desperate. It wasn't a fighting game, it was a choreography simulator. The progression system was equally elegant. You were a nameless warrior who had lost your soul, fighting through a gauntlet of demons to regain your humanity. There was a sense of zen in the grind.
You practiced with nunchucks, katanas, and daisho blades, learning the specific hitboxes and recovery frames of each. It felt like a martial arts journey. But even in this golden era, the seeds of the mobile Leviathan were being planted. The energy bar, the premium gems, and the increasingly difficult boss fights were subtle hints of the corporate monster lurking in the dark. The 3D gamble. Chasing the Wrong Dragon. November 2017. The release of Shadow Fight 3 was supposed to be the studio's rockstar moment. Neki abandoned the silhouettes that made them famous, opting instead for high-fidelity 3D characters with armor sets, factions, and facial animations. They wanted to prove they could compete with the big boys of the industry. On paper, it was a triumph of engineering. In reality, it was a betrayal of the brand. By stepping into the light, Shadow Fight became just another generic mobile brawler. The mystery was gone, replaced by a visual style that looked like 1,000 other fantasy RPGs on the App Store. But the visual shift was only the surface-level symptom of a deeper rot. The core mechanics of the game were redesigned around a card system. In the previous games, your skill and timing could overcome a gear deficit. In Shadow Fight 3, the math became the master. If your power level wasn't high enough, the enemy would essentially ignore your hits and delete your health bar in 2 strikes. This wasn't a test of reflexes, it was a check of your wallet. The game moved away from being a martial arts epic and became a spreadsheet simulator, where the only way to progress was to open booster packs. The monetization monster. As the series progressed into the late 2010s, the monetization didn't just support the game, it dictated the design. The shadow energy that once felt like a cool supernatural power-up was now a currency you had to farm or buy.
The gear wasn't something you earned through a trial by fire, it was something you collected in fragments. This is the fragmented progress model, a psychological trap designed to keep players in a state of perpetual almost there. You don't just need the sword, you need 10 shards of the sword, 5 upgrade stones and 1,000 coins. The introduction of the Battle Pass was the final nail in the coffin of the game's pacing. Instead of playing the game for the joy of combat, players were now performing chores to tick off daily objectives. The rhythmic soul of the combat was replaced by the rhythmic grind of the mobile economy. Neki had successfully scaled their empire, but in doing so, they had alienated the very fans who had carried them there. The hardcore fighting community, those who appreciated the frame data and tactical depth, found themselves locked out by paywalls, while the casual audience was overwhelmed by the complexity of the overlapping currencies. Shadow Fight Arena, the esports mirage. In an attempt to recapture the momentum, Neki pivoted again with Shadow Fight Arena. This was their bid for the competitive PvP market, a move intended to turn the franchise into a sustainable esport. They brought back some of the silhouetted elements in the shadow form mechanics, a desperate nod to their roots. But Arena doubled down on the most frustrating aspects of modern mobile gaming. The balancing was a nightmare. New hero characters were often released in an overpowered state to drive sales, only to be nerfed months later after the whales had spent their thousands. The community became a toxic battlefield of campers and spammers. Because the game's netcode and mechanics weren't originally built for real-time, frame-perfect PvP, the experience was often laggy and inconsistent. The momentum was well and truly dead. Shadow Fight was no longer a trendsetter, it was a follower, chasing the ghosts of Clash Royale and Marvel Contest of Champions.
It had become a corporate product designed by a committee of data scientists rather than a team of animators. The ghost of innovation. Today, the Shadow Fight franchise exists in a state of profitable stagnation. It still generates millions in revenue, fueled by a dedicated core of spenders and a legacy name that still pulls in new downloads. But the cultural weight it once held is gone. It is a ghost of the App Store, a reminder of a time when mobile games felt like they were pushing the boundaries of art rather than the boundaries of human patience. The tragedy of Shadow Fight is that it proved a developer could win by being different, only to eventually decide that winning by being the same was safer for the bottom line. They took the shadow, the very thing that gave them an identity in a crowded market, and bleached it under the harsh lights of corporate scaling. They traded a unique martial arts simulation for a generic loot box engine. This is the story of a warrior who fought the demons of the industry for so long that he eventually became one. This is the hollow, high-definition truth behind why Shadow Fight lost its momentum.